Now that simulated sound of rifle fire would scare me out of the Walters' backyard, but unfortunately, it had little effect on the birds that have made a mess of Zach and Bertina Walters' backyard for 6 months now.
They had them about 8 days, and no, the birds weren't frightened by the sound. In fact, they even walked around the blasting devices, pretty close to them, so they weren't bothered by them at all.
The sounders were put out by the wildlife department. Now that the young have been raised, they felt it was safe to chase the rest of the birds away. The egrets and herons are protected by the government. The problem has been protecting the property of the Walters family, who lost the use of their backyard this summer because of thousands of birds which left droppings, feathers, smell, and bugs everywhere. But many of the birds have departed for their winter retreat. And Bertina says now it's just a matter of the cleanup and removal of the nests to prevent those birds from returning next year. How would you assess this situation for somebody else who might see them landing in their yard next summer?
Well, I would say to pay attention to what they observe, because when they start coming in large numbers, they are setting up housekeeping. They are making their nests, and then after the nests are there, they won't leave. No instrument or blast or noise or anything is going to make them leave once they've got a nest.
In Your Corner contacted the Explorer Scouts, who have indicated they will help with the cleanup, and the Wildlife Department and Bethany Fire Departments have indicated they will help to knock the nest down in the Walters' now famous backyard. In Your Corner paid a return visit to the home of Mr. and Mrs. William Zoellner. Their furnace had been malfunctioning, the blower and the burner were not working together efficiently, and the bills were too high. Mrs. Zoellner said their warranty was running out, so she wanted the furnace taken care of before winter set in. The Coleman Furnace distributor told her, and later in Your Corner, that the furnace would be replaced. But the salesman was replaced, and his successors were not anxious to carry out the replacement of the furnace. They did tell us they would examine the unit. Mrs. Zoellner told us today repairs had been made.
But it does function as it should be according to the gas company here in Oklahoma City.
Okay, well, that's
so
great.
Hopefully it's going to be fine, but I'm so grateful to you for coming.
Ruben and Patty Gomez asked me to have a look at their wedding photographs. The couple explained to me they had seen a flyer of bargain prices on Photo World Studios, which came into Norman and set up in the Ramada Inn. They said the pictures were taken by a photographer from Ada named Ken Rowlands, but Photo World Studios is based in San Antonio and run by David Champion. Ruben said 2-inch slides were shown to him so he could pick out the photos he liked. He said he couldn't tell much from those little slides, but when he got the blown-up pictures, the flaws were very apparent.
It's like a bright side of light, overexposure of light on her left side of her face only. And sometimes a couple pictures over there in the settings that were kind of dark and fuzzy. And feeling, if that's $118 worth, I don't think it's very professional takingly done, because I think we should at least deserve better quality than that.
Before Ruben sent the pictures and negatives back, he had a set printed up to show us. Some were too dark, some a little out of focus, some with bad lighting, some with bad framing. Rather amateurish in general. Ruben said he called David Champion of Photo World in San Antonio.
I called him and he said that he had spoke to the photographer and he said that there's really nothing they can do. There's no way they can give us our money back. Only way they can do this to satisfy us is to get another session taken done. And I told him that's really, we don't feel that's right for us, because we should be at their convenience. Even though we don't like these pictures, we don't feel that's very good. If they're going to do it the way they did it the first time, they're probably going to do it again like that.
Well, I contacted Photo World in San Antonio. David Champion told me he had a no-refund policy, because the customer gets the negatives with the pictures. He said they could print up as many pictures as they wanted to, then send his back and ask for a refund. However, he did agree to retake the photos and use a different photographer if it would satisfy the Gomez. Ruben and Patty agreed to try one more setting, and if those are bad, then they said they will try small claims court. Ruben said they would have the photos taken elsewhere, but they're laid off from General Motors right now, and Ruben just got out of the hospital, so they can't spend the money. Plus, they said, doesn't seem right to have to get back into their wedding clothes once again and sit for pictures because the first set didn't come out 3 months ago.
They're supposed to be a professional company or something like that. I don't feel they are. At least not to me, my wife.
Okay.
And I think we should at least be satisfied with those pictures. If they're supposed to be our wedding pictures, I don't think that we'll be able to keep those.
The VA loan can be of great help for a veteran trying to break into the home market these days. The VA loan is quite similar to the FHA, except, of course, it's for a veteran who has served 90 days active duty in wartime or 181 continuous days peacetime. The VA loan also has an interest rate lower than conventional, as does FHA, but there are some advantages for the veteran. The VA loan allows for a larger mortgage, and you don't have to make a down payment. What some veterans don't know is that they can use the VA loan more than once.
The entitlement to start with every GI is $27,500. Most lenders will lend up to 4 times the amount of the entitlement with no down payment. So that would be up to $110,000. Used to sound like a lot of money, but it isn't too much on a house nowadays. He can use, if he buys a lower priced house, he may not use all of that, and the rest of it can be used later on to go in.
So in other words, an individual might only use half of his VA entitlement and then come back later and buy another house and use the rest of it.
Right. He would have to move into the new house he's buying. Yeah. He has to be buying a house for his home.
I see. Okay, and of course, if he used part of it before, what he has remaining will determine how much will be lent on it. In other words, if you used, let's say, 15 of it and had 12 left, he could only buy a house 4 times that amount.
Yeah, $48,000 on $12,000.
On October 1st, a new law went into effect on VA loans. Now, a veteran must pay a funding fee of 1/2 of 1% of the loan to the VA. They say it's to help defray the rising cost to the government of compensation to veterans. Well, that amount can be added on to the loan. As with FHA loans, the VA inspects the houses it arranges financing for, but they're letting more homes be sold as is, with less improvements, to make the transaction easier. And the FHA and VA inspections are now interchangeable. A viewer told In Your Corner he bought a home appraised or inspected by the VA and financed through FHA, but he later found big problems with the roof. What happens now? We'll look into that on tomorrow's In Your Corner. This is the first home that Keith Sossaman and his wife ever bought, and they worked hard to buy it. Now they are going to have to work harder to keep it. Keith showed me why. One look at the roof and you can see it is old and worn and sagging, and when you look inside you can see that it leaks, something Keith didn't know when he bought it. The ceilings inside had been newly textured and painted with no leaky spots in sight. Now it's coming off in the leaky spots, and Keith says his insurance company will not renew the policy unless the roof is fixed, something he can't afford. Keith bought the home on a government-insured FHA loan. Now, the FHA inspects their homes, but this one had been inspected by the VA. As I explained in earlier reports, the FHA and the VA accept each other's inspections nowadays. But Keith can't understand why they approved the home for FHA or VA with a bad roof. Can you afford to put a new roof on that thing right now?
There's no way in the world. This is our first major purchase. Me and my wife, she's almost 21, and I'm 21 now. And it took us over a year to save up this much money just for the down payment to get the house. And now they say it's going to cost about $1,000 to fix the roof on the house. And we're both working, and we're making it barely the way it is, and there's just no way we can afford it.
Okay, so you think this is a pretty raw deal?
I think it is. I really do. I don't know really who to blame for it. I don't know if it's FHA or the realtor or maybe the former owner of the house. But I think it's a raw deal the way they did it. Now, we did find out in the contract that we did sign the contract that we take the house as is. Of course, now the realtor, the lady, real estate lady told us that certain things were wrong with the house, and she gave us an idea of what things were wrong with the house. And we said we would fix them because they were minor things, but we didn't expect the roof to be like this. And
did she tell you about the roof?
She did not tell us about the roof.
Okay.
We did not know anything about the roof until the insurance company brought it up.
Well, Keith's insurance man wrote up a policy on the house so Keith could have his closing because the FHA requires insurance. But later, an insurance inspector took a look at the house and said they could not renew the policy unless the roof was fixed. I asked insurance man Larry Kaiser how the FHA inspector could approve that roof when the insurance company inspector could not.
My insurance company is concerned about paying out claims when there is a greater exposure on a poor roof. And maybe they took at it, they're subject to lose money every time it rains if the roof's in bad shape. Therefore, they are going to look at the house probably a lot closer than someone else. We're insuring it. They're not insuring it.
And Charles Lamb of the Department of Housing and Urban Development says that's the key. The FHA insures the loan, not the house. Now, it was appraised by the VA, and that appraisal must be accepted by the FHA. That appraisal sets a value on the house in its present condition, and they issue a certificate to that effect.
Along with that, they issued to the future buyer various pieces of information to expose to him that he's not getting a guarantee. He's only getting a certificate of reasonable value on this house as it is. Okay. He's also forewarned, and I can't give you the wording since I don't have it in front of me. It's not our wording, it's theirs. He is forewarned that there are certain elements within his house that maybe should be checked out by an expert.
So, Lamb says it is still a buyer beware situation. Just because a home is appraised by the VA or FHA, the buyer must still check it out for himself for possible flaws. A hard lesson to learn for Keith Sossaman, who has a leaky roof, can't afford high-risk insurance, but must have some insurance or have his home loan foreclosed and lose his first house. Linda told me she thought she was getting into the egg business last Easter when she bought a bag of feed and got 25 free little chicks with it. But she says she was wrong. She got into the rooster business instead, and she wants out.
I got them at a local feed store on Easter Sunday. It was a special.
They were chicks at that time, though, right?
Cute little yellow chicks,
And what were you hoping for?
Hens and eggs.
I see.
We got all roosters.
Yeah. So what about slaughtering and frying them or cooking them?
We debated on a barbecue, and everyone was for chicken barbecue, but no one was for plucking feathers.
Well, Linda was quite surprised when she learned she raised all roosters. And she says there's something about having 25 roosters crowing at the crack of dawn every day that she just doesn't care for. So she decided it was time that the birds flew the coop. That's when she called In Your Corner. Well, we checked around for someone that might be able to use them for Thanksgiving dinner. But the only organization that would take chickens that were not already dressed was the Baptist Boys Ranch. In fact, they said they'd come and pick them up. Linda had already chased about half the roosters into the coop. The rest were roaming over a couple of acres of weeds behind the house. I would have chased them down myself, but I had nowhere to put them. So I waited for the Boys Ranch to show up. Have you guys ever caught chickens before, roosters? Sounds easy though, doesn't it? Think you can do it? Okay. Clifford Plummer of the Boys Ranch brought along 2 chicken catcher trainees, 12-year-old Joseph Young and 14-year-old Anthony Say. First, they picked up the roosters in the coop while we gave them our moral support.
Come here, Anthony and Joe. I don't know whether we're going to catch these things or not.
Hey, Joe, you want to go? Here. He just kept them by the legs.
Here.
We want to
Well, Clifford made it look easy, and it wasn't long before he and his helpers had the chicken coop cleaned out, except for a few quick roosters.
All right, I think that's all of them out here.
Ready?
Yeah, we'll go out and open up, leave this door open and dry those others.
Well, the team loaded up the first half of the roosters in their pens, and the boys tried to chase down the rest of them in the fields, but decided they'd come back the next day for the rest of them. Olivia Powell told me the house next door was partially torn down in February after the tenants had been relocated. But by June, the shell of the house was still sitting there, becoming a haven for rats, mice, and bugs, and a dangerous playground for neighborhood children. She thought homes demolished for the Central Expressway project were to be cleaned up within 30 days.
They told me the agreement they made with the city council on these properties would be that they would clear the property off within 30 days. And it's been like this since the 3rd week of February.
Have you talked to anybody about getting it taken care of?
Yes, I've called the Department of Relocation with the state transportation and called Mrs. Kitchen, and she never returned my call. However, I did talk to a Mr. Hubbard, who is in the relocation division, and they keep telling me 30 days, but like 60 or 90 days has already passed.
I checked with Jim Webb of the State Department of Transportation Right-of-Way Division. He said bids for cleanup were to be awarded June 25th. Then a work order would be issued, and 60 working days would be allowed for the cleanup. That meant it would be done at least by September. But it appears this rat-infested wreckage hasn't been touched since our last report, so I went back to the State Transportation Department to find out why. Jim Webb, whom I talked to before, was on a missionary trip out of the country. This time I was referred to Tom Hargis, Assistant Division Engineer. Hargis said the cleanup bid had been awarded to the Thistle Company, but the resident engineer had not issued the work order until 2 months after that. He said the resident engineer has a heavy workload. Then the 60 working days time limit began after that, so the cleanup would not have to be completed for maybe another 3 months. However, Hargis said he looked at the mess next to Olivia Powell and said it was one of the worst, so the state would go ahead and clean it up as soon as possible. In your corner, we'll check back once again. That wreckage is already sat there 8 months. We also checked back on the situation with Oklahoma City's Big Brother, Big Sister program. Earlier in the summer, the organization told In Your Corner there was a great need for Big Brothers. Program Director Darlene Kidd said there were a few hundred boys in this area that needed a father figure in their lives.
That's one thing about our business. The more that people hear about us, the more they apply. So on the one hand, it decreases, but for every child we match, on an average, we'll get 3 more requests for service in. So until we get close to the point that we're meeting all of the needs of this community, we're not going to see a decrease in the children waiting to be assigned.
Well, one of those who saw our earlier report was David McCrae, who became the big brother of Mike. They've been spending a lot of time together that both find very rewarding.
Well, I think we'll try to get involved in some of the sporting activities. I know Mike is kind of wanting to get involved in that. I think maybe a football game down the line. We're going to do some fishing tonight. We played some putt-putt already, and I think I'll teach him how to play tennis too.
We've been playing putt-putt, and we went to see some people play tennis, and we went to play some video games, and I went to the softball game, and we're going to go fishing tonight.
Let's embarrass David, and tell me what kind of guy he is.
He's pretty nice. He's a fun guy.
When I visited Leon Harrels' home, the only thing he had remaining from the door-to-door salesman was a brochure about Brute liquid cleaner and a red spot on his carpet. Now, it's difficult to see on camera, but there is a red tint here, and Leon's been seeing red ever since the salesman put the spot there.
He walked up on the back porch, asked if he could interest me in cleaner. I told him, well, you know, everyone is interested in a good cleaner. He said he'd like to demonstrate it for me. Asked if I had a carpet spot or that something that he could demonstrate it on. And I said, I'm sure I do. Let's go and look around. I said, if it's good, I'm interested. Yeah. So we came in. He knelt down as if he had found a spot that might be worth showing me. Yeah. And first thing I knew, he was spraying red spray paint on my carpet. And he said, do you know what that is? I said, I know what it's going to be if you don't get it up.
Well, what it was a mess. The red spray paint would not come out with the salesman's Brute cleaner. Leon has been redecorating his home this year and just put this new carpet down. Now it had a red spot on it. Well, the salesman said he'd get the stain out or have it professionally cleaned or replace the carpet. But that was 6 weeks ago.
He left and never came back. And I've called the main company in Alabama 4 times. And each and every time she's always friendly and says, we will do something about it. Will you be home between 4 and 5 Saturday? Yeah. And I say, yes, I'll be there. I make it a point to be here, but no one ever comes by.
How long has this been going on?
This is 6 weeks now.
Okay. Leon said the brochure on the front called the cleaner Brute, but on the inside it called the product Incredible. That was strange, he said, because another salesman called at his house with a product called Get Clean, but it also had the name Incredible on it. He wondered if the products were the same. He said the salesman told him he was staying at a city motel where I went to investigate. We traced the sales team here to the American Inn at the intersection of Reno and Council. Inn personnel say it was a group of about 10 salesmen, mainly teenage boys. They stayed 3 or 4 days and then moved on to Houston, but not before selling some of their product to the Inn. However, motel officials said the product they bought was called Get Clean, but the brochure with it said Incredible on it and had the same Alabama address as the Brute cleaner. The hotel manager said the cleaner seemed to work, but the desk clerk said there was something unusual about the sale.
They had a trailer, and they told us that they couldn't give us any out of the trailer because it didn't have any labels on it.
I see. So the stuff they gave you came from another location?
That's the way it sounded.
Okay. Well, it seemed strange they couldn't give them the product from the trailer, but had to get it somewhere else, which made us wonder if some of their product worked and some didn't. Linda Good, who bought some Brute cleaner, wondered the same thing. Her daughter Tracy said the salesman demonstrated some of the Brute cleaner on a range, which worked, but that came from a different bottle than what he sold them.
Sprayed some on there and just wiped it off with that pad.
Came right off?
Right.
What happened when your mother tried it after he was gone with her bottle?
When she tried it, nothing happened. it wouldn't even come off at all.
Well, Tracy went to find the salesman to see what they were doing wrong, but he ran away from her. Tracy's mother canceled her check for $20, the cost of brood cleaner, so she solved her own problem. In Your Corner checked with the head company in Alabama. They said the salesman that sprayed paint on Leon Harrels' carpet had been fired, and they said they would clean the carpet, which they finally did to Leon's satisfaction after 6 weeks of waiting. Pam Lovin works at the Prairie Queen Elementary School cafeteria. She brought the capsule in question to work along with her today to show us. She says her husband has a back injury and has been taking Bufferin extra-strength pain capsules for some time now. She says the bottle has no protective seal on the top, so she was alarmed when he found this capsule.
And he hollered at me and he said, "Why don't you come in here and look at this tablet?" And I looked at it and it looked like it had been tried to be pulled apart. And so I said, well, I'm going to keep that.
It appeared that the overlapping side of the capsule had been peeled back and one end of the capsule had been poked in. Well, it looked suspicious enough in light of the recent poisonings with Tylenol capsules in Chicago that Pam thought she should notify authorities.
So I called the Narcotics and Drug Control first. Well, then they told me to call the Poison Control next. And then when I called them, they told me to call the police department.
What'd they tell you?
Well, the police department told me that I should take it to the nearest pharmacist and have tests run on it, and that they would contact the police department then. Well, then I took it to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist told me, said, well, if you're afraid of it, he said, just throw the rest of the bottle away. He asked me when I purchased it, and I said, oh, probably a week to 10 days ago, and he said, well, then it's probably nothing to worry about. And I said, what do I do with it? And he said, well, just whatever you want to. He said, either throw it away or, don't worry about it then. And he said, I don't know what to tell you to do with it.
Pam wasn't satisfied with that. She felt if the capsule had been tampered with, there might be others like it that might harm someone. So she called In Your Corner. Well, I contacted the Oklahoma City County Health Department, where Ivan Smith, supervisor of consumer protection, took a look at the capsule.
Number one, you can see that it's tore back here and rolled underneath when it was put together. And it also appears to have had somebody with some dirt on their hands or something, because it's smudged in this area here. Also, it looks like they pushed hard enough they caved in the end, because it should be convex like that and it's concave. And so this probably got caught and they shoved hard enough to push it in. They caved the end in. Yeah, that's what it looks like to me. If I were making a judgment, I'd say, yeah, it's been tampered with. I certainly wouldn't take it. If there was any doubt in my mind on a bottle of any kind of drugs, I wouldn't take them. No way.
Smith told me anyone with a question about a capsule can contact the City County Health Department, and they will contact the local food and drug officials, who will in turn investigate and have a lab test run if necessary. He told us we could turn Pam Lovin's capsule over to the FDA at the federal courthouse, but we found they had moved. When we finally located their office, no one was there and the door was locked.